My name is Rishi Khurana. Today I'll be covering chapter in social science for class 9th. So children can now keep their books in front for a better understanding. So let's start. Social science meaning, scope and importance. Chapter 1, page 1 to 10 I'll be covering. Meaning of social science. Human beings are social by nature. From birth, each person becomes a part of a family and gradually becomes connected to wider groups, such as neighbors, classmates, friends, and co workers. People live in villages, towns, and cities where they depend on one another for safety, livelihood, learning, and well being. They share public spaces and resources such as water, roads, schools, hospitals, markets, parks, and workplaces. They also share ideas, customs, languages, beliefs, and responsibilities. Because life is lived together, the actions of one person can affect many others. Social science is a study of these connections and shared arrangements. Social science, key definitions by scholars and authors. James High defined it as bodies of learning and study which recognize the simultaneous and mutual action of physical and non physical stimuli, which produces social relations. Charles Beard described it as a body of knowledge and thought pertaining to human affairs as distinguished from sticks, stones, stars, and physical objects. Social science studies society in a careful, organized, and systematic way. It does not rely on our personal opinions or assumptions. It asks questions, collects information, compares evidence, and builds explanations. It helps us to understand how people live together, how groups are formed, how rules and institutions develop, and how societies change over time. It also encourages us to think about fairness and responsibility by examining who gains from a decision, who loses, and why. Social science can be understood as the study of two closely related aspects of human life, people and their relationships. This includes the ways in which people interact and support one another in everyday life. It covers family life, community living, social customs, religious and cultural practices, roles and responsibilities, and patterns of behavior. For example, social science may explore how families make decisions, how communities celebrate festivals, how different languages are used in public life, or how social rules influence what people can or cannot do. Systems and institutions. This includes the organized structure that shape how society works. Institutions such as government, law, courts, social schools, police, markets, banks, and local bodies influence daily life. They decide how resources are shared, how public services are provided, how rights and duties are protected. For example, social science may study how elections are held, how laws are made, how budgets affect public services, or how trade and price influence what families can afford. Social science does not only describe what happens in the society, it also asks why it happens and what its effects are. It looks for causes and consequences. It tries to understand patterns such as why some regions develop faster than others, why some communities have better access to clean water, or why certain forms of work are valued more than others. Consider a situation where some children find it easier to complete schooling than others. Social science encourages us to ask questions such as: are schools located far from certain villages or settlements? Do families have enough time to afford uniform, books, and transport? Do historical disadvantages or social discrimination affect people's opportunities in education, employment, and social mobility? Do government policies support all citizens equally, including girls and children with disabilities? These questions show that social situations usually have more than one cause. A single issue can have geographical, economic, political, and historical reasons at the same time. Social science helps us to connect these reasons and develop a fuller understanding. By studying social science, we begin to see that society is not fixed. It is shaped by human choices and actions. People create rules, institutions, and traditions, and people can also improve them. This understanding supports responsible citizens. It helps us to develop awareness about society and prepares us to make informed decisions in our daily life. The key learnings: social science studies how people live together through relationships, shared spaces, customs, and responsibilities. It examines systems and institutions such as government, law, schools, markets, and courts that shape people's daily lives. It uses organized inquiry, evidence, and reasoning rather than assumptions of personal opinion. It explains social issues by linking causes and consequences, often across geography, history, economics, and politics. Scope of social science. The scope of social science refers to the wide range of questions and areas it studies in order to understand human life and society. Human beings live in communities, depend on nature and resources, earn livelihoods, follow rules, and participate in collective decision making. Because these aspects of life are closely connected, no single subject can explain society fully. Social science, therefore, brings together several disciplines to build a fuller picture of society and to help us understand the world carefully and responsibly. At the school level, social science is commonly organized around four core disciplines: geography, political science, history, and economics. These disciplines have distinct questions and methods, yet they overlap in real life. Social science becomes meaningful when we connect ideas across these areas and use evidence to understand society, environment, economy, and governance together. Geography as a discipline. Geography studies the earth as the home of human beings. It helps us understand landforms, climate, rivers, soils, forests, and resources. At the same time, it studies how people live in different places and how they use the environment. Geography answers questions such as: why do we some places receive more rainfall than others? Why are some regions densely populated with others are not? How do climate and soil influence agriculture? How do natural resources affect industries and livelihoods? Geography helps us see that human life is closely linked to physical conditions. For example, farming practices in a dry region differ from those in the region with heavy rainfall. Similarly, coastal regions may have fishing and sea trade, while mountain regions may depend on tourism, forest, or terrace farming. Geography also helps us understand the environmental challenges, such as flood droughts, deforestation, pollution, and climate related risks. It encourages the value of sustainability because it shows how that careless use of resources can harm both people and nature. Geographers often use satellite images to study rivers, forests, cities, crop, and coastlines. This method is called remote sensing. It helps track floods, droughts, deforestation, and urban growth. It also supports disaster management by providing quick information during cyclones, earthquakes, and other natural hazards. History as a discipline. History studies the past, but its purpose is not only to remember dates or kings. It helps us understand how society has changed over time and why present is shaped the way it is. History explores people and their living in different periods. Social and cultural developments, the rise and fall of institutions and ideas, major events and changes, movements for freedom and justice. History is important because it helps us understand today's society did not appear suddenly. Many present day institutions and practices have developed over long periods. For example, when we study India's freedom struggle, we learn about ideas of justice, equality, and rights. These ideas later influenced the making of our constitution. In this way, history helps us understand why democratic values are important in modern India. History also teaches us to respect diversity. India's past includes many languages, religions, art forms, and ways of living. By studying this richness, we can learn that diversity is not a weakness, it is a strength that has shaped Indian society. Political science as a discipline. Political science studies how societies are governed. It focuses on government institutions, laws, rights, duties, and ways in which people participate in public life. Political science helps us understand why societies need rules, how laws are made and implemented, how government work at local, state, and national levels, what rights and duties citizens have, how democracy functions through participation and representation. Political science is closely linked to daily life. For example, when we use public services such as roads, schools, hospitals, and transport, we are experiencing governance. When we vote or discuss public issues, we are participating as citizens. Political science helps students become aware, land responsible citizens who understand both rights and responsibilities. Political science also supports inclusivity and equity by discussing equality before the law, protection of rights, and responsibility of the state to support all citizens, especially those who are underprivileged. Engage and reflect. If you had to present one local problem to local government body, what facts do you use to support your case, and what solution would you propose that is realistic and fair? Economics and discipline. Economics studies how people and societies manage resources and make choices. Resources are limited, but human needs are unlimited. Economics helps us understand how goods and services are produced, distributed, and consumed, and how people earn a living. Economics examines works and employment, markets and prices, income and expenditure, production of goods and services, poverty and development, the role of government in the economy. Economics explains realities that we can observe around us. For example, a family may plan its spending based on income. A shopkeeper sets prices based on cost and demand. Farmers choose crops based on rainfall, soil, and market prices. These are economic decisions. Economics also shows why equity matters. If some people have a very limited access to education, healthcare, or jobs, they may remain trapped in poverty. Understanding this helps us to see why fair opportunities are necessary for a just society. Key learnings. Social science has a wide scope because society involves environment, livelihoods, rules, and collective decision making. It brings together four core disciplines: geography, history, political science, and economics. Each discipline has its own questions and methods, but real life issues require connections across disciplines. Linking ideas across subjects helps us build fuller explanations of society, environment, economy, and governance. Relevance of social science. Social science is relevant because it helps us to understand our lives and the world around us. It connects classroom, learning to everyday experiences. Its relevance can be understood through four important areas: society, environment, economy, and governance. Social science and society. Every society has different groups and different ways of living. Social science helps us understand how these differences develop and how people learn to live together. For example, in India, people speak different languages, follow different religions, and practice different customs. Yet they share common spaces and institutions. Social science helps us understand how unity is built in a diverse society. It also helps us identify social challenges such as discrimination, prejudice, and social exclusion, and encourages students to value inclusivity. Inclusivity is not only an idea, it influences real decisions. For instance, schools and encourage that encourage equal participation among all students are practicing inclusivity. Communities that ensure access to water and sanitation for everyone are practicing inclusivity. Social science and the environment. Human beings depend on the environment for survival and development. We need land for farming and housing, rivers for water, forest and resources, and energy for work. Social science helps us understand how human activity affects the environment and how environmental changes affect human life. For example, cutting forests may provide land for construction, but it can also lead to soil erosion, reduce rainfall, and loss of wildlife. Similarly, pollution may result from industrial growth, but it can harm health and agriculture. By studying these links, social science encourages sustainability. Sustainability helps us to think beyond immediate gain and consider long term effects on nature and society. Social science and economy. Most families make daily economic choices. They decide how to earn a living, how to spend money, and how to save for future needs. Social science helps us students understand such choices not only at the family level but also the level of society. For example, when job opportunities grow in city, people may migrate there for work. This can lead to growth, but it can also create pressure on housing, water supply, and transport. This shows how economic decisions affect society and environment. Economics also helps us to understand why development should not only mean more income. Development should also mean better education, health, safety, and dignity. This idea links to equity because development must benefit all, not only a few. Social science and governance. Governance shapes many parts of our daily life. Government decisions influence schools, hospitals, and roads, law and order, and public welfare schemes. Social science helps students understand how these decisions are taken and how citizens can engage with them. For example, if a community faces a problem such as poor water supply, it can raise the issue through local bodies and elected representatives. Understanding governance helps students realize that democracy is not only about elections, it's also about participation, awareness, and accountability. Political understanding also helps us to recognize the importance of equality and justice. If laws protect only some people and ignore others, society becomes unfair. Therefore, a governance must support inclusivity and equity. Interconnections of social science. Social science becomes meaningful when we connect its disciplines. Many real life issues cannot be understood through only one subject. They require combined thinking. Consider the example of floods in a city. Geography helps us understand rainfall, river systems, land use, and drainage. History can explain how the city developed, where people settled, and how land was used over time. Economics helps us examine damage to livelihoods, cost of rebuilding, and how poverty makes some people more vulnerable. Political science helps us understand the role of government in disaster management, public safety, and planning. This example shows that social science is not a collection of separate subjects. It is connected way of understanding real life. Guiding values in social science. Social science develops not only knowledge but also values. These values act as guiding principles when we examine society and when we make choices in daily life. In India, they connect closely with constitutional ideas stated in the preamble, especially justice, liberty, equality, and fraternity. Guiding values helps us in three different ways. First, they shape how to treat people, how we respond to difference. Second, they guide how we use natural resources and plan development. Third, they help us judge whether decisions, rules, and policies are fair and beneficial for all. Diversity. Diversity means recognizing and respecting differences among people. These differences may be seen in language, religion, region, caste, tribe, gender, age, occupation, physical ability, food habits, clothing, and cultural practices. Diversity exists naturally because communities have different histories, environments, and traditions. Understanding diversity involves more than noticing differences. It means understanding how diversity enriches society. In India, the variety of languages and cultural traditions can be seen in festivals, art, local crafts, architecture, music, and food. When we respect these variety, we strengthen social harmony and build a wider sense of belonging. Diversity also requires to be careful about stereotypes. Sometimes quick judgments are formed based on a person's language, clothing, occupation, or place of origin. A value based approach encourages us to question such assumptions, understand reasons behind different practices, and treat every person with dignity. This supports fraternity, which is the idea that all citizens should relate to one another with respect and a shared sense of togetherness. So, did you know? According to 2011 census of India, there are 121 languages and 1,369 rationalized mother tongues spoken across the country. Among these, 22 languages are recognized under the 8th schedule of the Indian Constitution, providing them with social status. Inclusivity. It means ensuring that everyone feels welcomed, respected, and able to participate fully in shared spaces such as classrooms, playgrounds, neighborhoods, and public institutions. It reminds us that some groups have faced exclusion or discrimination, that fairness requires active steps to remove barriers. Inclusivity can be seen in everyday situations. In a classroom, it means ensuring equal participation, preventing bullying, and supporting all students, including girls and children with disabilities. In a community, it means making sure that public facilities such as drinking water points, toilets, and health services are accessible and safe for everyone. In public life, it means ensuring that people can speak, work, and take part in discussions without fear of humiliation. Inclusivity is closely connected with equality of status and opportunity. It also matches national education goals that emphasize removing barriers created by social and economic disadvantage. Sustainability. It means using resources wisely so that both person and future generations can meet their needs. It requires balance between development and protection of nature. This includes careful use of land, water, forests, minerals, and energy, as well as reducing pollution and waste. Sustainability becomes clearer when we connect environment with livelihood and well being. Cutting forests may create land for construction, but it can also lead to soil erosion, reduced water availability, and loss of biodiversity. Industrial growth may increase production and employment, but it can also pollute air and rivers, harming health and agriculture. Overuse of groundwater may support farming for a period, but it can cause long term water scarcity. A sustainable approach asks long term questions: who benefits now? Who will bear the cost later? How can development be planned so that the nature is protected and livelihoods remain secure? This value is also reflected in global goals that link human well being with protecting the planet. Equity. It means fairness in opportunities and outcomes. It recognizes that people do not start from the same position. Some face disadvantages because of poverty, discrimination, disability, remoteness, or lack of access to services. Equity requires additional support where it is needed so that everyone has a genuine chance to study, stay healthy, and live with dignity. Equity can be seen in many public decisions, scholarships, free textbooks, or meal programs that support children from low income families. RAMs, assistive devices, and supportive teaching methods for children with disabilities. Stronger school and health facilities in remote areas where services are limited. Targeted support for communities that have faced long term exclusions. Equity connects strongly with constitutional promise of justice and equality of opportunity. And it is also emphasized in education policy, aims to ensure quality education for all regardless of background. Engage and reflect. What is one situation in school where treating everyone the same may be unfair? What equity based support would help ensure participation and dignity for all? Why these values matter? These values matter because living together requires understanding and responsibility. They help us examine real problems such as discrimination, unequal access to services, environmental damage, and poverty with sensitivity as well as clear reasoning. They also guide us towards decisions that are fair, inclusive, and sustainable in line with constitutional ideas. E-learning. Social science develops alongside knowledge linked to constitutional ideas such as justice, liberty, equality, and fraternity. Guiding values shape how we respond to difference, how we plan development, and how we judge fairness in public decisions. Diversity, inclusivity, sustainability, and equity help us examine social problems with sensitivity and clear reasoning. These values support responsible citizenships and encourage actions that protect dignity and promote social harmony. Understanding social science from an Indian perspective, social science studies people and society, but society does not look the same everywhere. The questions a country asks, the problems it faces, and the solution it chooses are shaped by its geography, history, economy, and systems of governance. This is why perspective matters. When we study social science from an Indian perspective, we try to understand India as it is, which is unique experiences and realities. India is often described as plural and diverse, but diversity is not only a description of culture, it also shapes questions of language policy, access to public services, employment, and representation. In many places, people of different communities live side by side and share common facilities. In other places, differences can become reasons for prejudice and exclusion. A grounded understanding of India therefore involves recognizing diversity while also examining how equality and dignity can be protected in daily life and in public systems. Indian secularism is often discussed as distinctive because it focuses on protecting religion freedom while ensuring that the state treats all faiths fairly in a diverse democracy. This becomes important when we examine questions such as minority rights, public order, and equality before the law. The Constitution of a guiding framework for public life. India's constitution is central to understanding public life because it defines the ideals of justice, liberty, equality, and fraternity as sets out how institutions should function in a democracy. These values are not only for courts or parliament, they guide how we think about discrimination, unequal access to resources, and the responsibilities of government. An Indian perspective also stresses scientific temper and the spirit of inquiry when we examine social issues. This means we should question rumors, stereotypes, and single story explanations, and instead look for evidence and multiple causes. The fundamental duties include developing scientific temper, humanism, and the spirit of inquiry and reform, which supports this approach. The past and the making of modern India. To understand India today, we need to understand how the past shaped present institutions and identities, colonial rule, influenced land revenue systems, education, transport industries, and pattern of inequality. The freedom struggle shaped ideas of rights, justice, and citizenship and helped create a commitment to democratic governance. This historical understanding helps us that present day debates and laws about equality, development, and national integration have deep roots and cannot be understood only by looking at current events. Governance from village to nation. It is a constitutional democracy with several levels of government. Understanding governance in India means understanding how decisions are made and implemented at different levels and how people participate as citizens. Local self-government is especially important because it brings decision making closer to people's daily needs, such as drinking water, sanitation, local roads, and village or ward planning. The 73rd Constitution Amendment Act strengthened Panchayati Raj institutions and is often discussed as a major step towards decentralization and wider participation, including provisions that support representation of groups that were historically excluded. This perspective helps us see democracy as more than elections. It is also about participation, accountability, and the everyday work of public institutions. Environment and livelihood. Nature shapes livelihoods in powerful ways in India. Monsoons influence agriculture, rivers support irrigation and transport, and forests support both biodiversity and local economies. Environmental issues here often involve questions of survival and justice. For instance, deforestation, water scarcity, floods, and pollution affect communities differently. Those fewer resources may live in more vulnerable locations and may have fewer alternatives when crops fail or when water becomes unsafe. Understanding such issues requires linking environment with work, poverty, public policy, and long term planning, which supports sustainability as a guiding value. Economic life and development. Economic life shapes our daily choices because livelihood, inequality, and development affect what we can afford and what opportunities we can access. Work in India ranges from agriculture and fishing to crafts, factories, construction, transport, retail, and services, with many people depending on seasonal or informal jobs and uncertain incomes. Development can improve roads, electricity, digital access, healthcare, and employment, but its benefits are not shared equally across regions and social groups. An Indian perspective, through therefore, asks who gains, who remains excluded, and how prices, wages, and public services influence mobility. Migration for work also shows these links, as it can raise incomes while putting pressure on housing, water, transport, and public services. An Indian perspective encourages us to connect disciplines rather than keep them separate. A single issue such as migration, drought, unemployment, or urban overcrowding involves geography, history, economics, and political institutions at the same time. It also encourages us to judge choices using constitutional values, respect for diversity, inclusivity, sustainability, and equity. In this way, the subject becomes a tool of understanding our own lives and our country, and for developing the habit of thinking carefully, fairly, and responsibly about society and public decisions. Key learnings, social questions and solutions vary across countries, so studying social science needs awareness of perspective and context. India's diversity influences language, representation, access to services, and need to protect equality and dignity. The Constitution guides public life, institutions, rights, and responsibilities, and support scientific temper and inquiry. Understanding India involves linking environment, livelihoods, governance, and development, and asking who benefits and who is excluded. Diversity. Diversity is the presence and respectful recognition of differences among people, including language, religion, region, and culture. Inclusivity. Inclusivity is the practice of ensuring that everyone feels respected and can participate fully by removing barriers and preventing exclusion. Sustainability. Sustainability is the responsible use of resources so that present needs are met without harming the ability of future generations to meet theirs. Equity, fairness in opportunities and outcomes, which may require additional support for those facing disadvantage. Decentralization, sharing of decision making power with local bodies so that governance is closer to people's daily needs. Prejudice, an unfair judgment about a person or group formed without sufficient knowledge or evidence. Migration, the movement of people from one place to another, often for work, which affects the society, services, and the economy. Thank you for completing chapter 1 of social science, meaning, scope, and importance. Thank you.